Welcome to the Tank Magazine podcast. In this episode, we'll be listening back to a conversation hosted at Tank HQ as part of our book talk series, in which Turkish writer Sema Kaygusuz is joined by two of her translators, Maureen and Nicholas Glastonbury, to discuss her novel, Every Fire You Tend, translated into English by Glastonbury and published by Tilted Access Press. Told from the perspective of an unnamed female protagonist trapped in her Istanbul apartment, the novel interweaves fragments of memory and mythic fever dreams to confront the genocidal erasure of the Zaza-speaking Kurds of Turkey and the psychic afterlife of trauma as it collapses the distance between past and present.
Evening. It's a great pleasure to be here and to celebrate a very important publication. Yes? Some of you will know a bit about Sema Kaygusuz, but let me remind you that she is one of Turkey's leading women novelists and short story writers. But more importantly, she's one of my favorite writers anywhere. Okay. She became known in Turkey through her short stories really early. I mean, you started writing short stories when you were...
I was 23 years old.
But tell the truth. How old were you when you wrote your first short story?
11.
11. Okay. And it's one of your published short stories. Yeah. And it's really good. Okay. So her first novel, which was in Turkish, Yere Düşen Dualar, which strangely, has happened to you many times, comes out as Wine and Gold.
Wine and Gold, yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But that won international recognition. Mm-hmm. You've been awarded prizes in Turkey, and also in France, and most recently in Germany. The Friedrich Rückert. Yes, Rückert.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, practicing my accent. Friedrich Rückert. And the first volume that came out in English was the short story collection, The Well of Trapped Words, which I was very lucky to be able to translate. Jealous of you.
Very beautiful.
And now we have the new book, Every Fire You Tend, translated by Nicholas Glastonbury, beautifully translated. Yeah. Nicholas is a doctoral candidate in cultural anthropology at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, and co-editor of the e-zine Jadalia. Yes, and you translate from Turkish and
Kurdish. Yeah.
Can I ask you how you came into our wonderful, beautiful, fractured world?
About 10 years ago, it's crazy that it's been 10 years, I went on a university trip to Istanbul. And it was a very impressionable, first year university student, looking for something to guide my, career, if you want to call it. I don't know. And I decided to learn Turkish. And so when I went back to New York, I started taking Turkish classes. I started getting interested in translation. And then I studied abroad in Istanbul. And people knew me as the Turkey guy.
And then you found out that everybody in Istanbul was speaking Kurdish. Yeah?
Right. Well, yes. And the more time I spent in Turkey, the more I realized that Kurdish was this sort of absent presence in a lot of the kind of...
Which Kurdish?
Kurmanji.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we'll come back to your career and your interests. Sure. But let's first of all go to the book, which has a very different title in Turkish. So I was wondering if you could explain the title. Yeah, so a place on your face or a spot.
On your face.
Yeah. And it's translated as Every Fire You Tend. Mm-hmm. Can I ask you how you went from one title to the other and why? Did you discuss it?
Oh, we did, yeah.
Yeah.
We spent the first 3 years planning to call it A Place Upon Your Face, and then sort of as in the lead up to, as we were putting the final edits on the book with the publisher, the folks at the publisher, Saba and Theodora, were like, we think A Place Upon Your Face is a bit of an obscure title, so can we find something else? And Sema and her agent Yashim and I started like a WhatsApp chain, and we discussed sort of possibilities. The way that apparently the title had been chosen in the first place was Sema had picked a line out of the book, usually they be out of place upon your face. And so that line is in the book still in English somewhere. But
I found it.
Yeah. But for this one as well, we picked this out of the book, and
it's significant. They're both significant about the belief system, if you like, and they're both very, very elusive. And I'm glad it wasn't imposed. I'm glad you worked it out. Now, you say in your very interesting afterword that this is not a history, this is not a historical novel, but it is born of history, and born of the tragedies of a certain part of history. So, for our audience here, these histories are not completely known in Turkey. People know and they don't know, but most people here don't know at all, and they don't understand the context. So, if you could explain what happened in Dersim.
In 1937 and 8, Turkish government, new Republican, want to make homogenise all Turkish society.
Turkification.
And then Dersim area is completely different. There are a lot of ethnic groups together: Armenian, Kurdish, Zaza-speaking Turkmen, and they have interesting language, and their belief system completely different. Majority of Turkey.
And also, even in the Ottoman Empire, they were never quite inside.
Never quite inside.
Yeah.
And they have a name also. They have special autonomy in Ottoman time, but Republican time, the Turkish society doesn't accept this kind of differences. And then they make a massacre. My grandmother was survived. She lost every family, only one brother, and she had seen her brother and sister dead body in the river, and then she exiled Black Sea side to Samsun, first a village, then the center, and the system assimilated my father's side. It's interesting. My father was a retired military force.
Yeah.
He was
not
member of the military. This is exactly assimilation system.
Yeah.
And we didn't know anything. I didn't know anything.
Now, I was going to ask you about that. So we have this story, which is this brutal suppression of rebellion in Dersim, and then of course we have it was bombed, and it was bombed by Sabiha Gökçen. If you ever go to that airport, that's Ataturk's daughter, yes. And we won't say what we think about Sabiha Gökçen because that's another story. Yeah. But the thing that's very hard to explain outside Turkey is how you didn't know that. So if you can explain what kind of family you grew up in and how you found out the story, because it was quite a shock, yeah?
Yes, it was shock. My family full of compassion, full of lovely, and we are very open each other. There were no any word forbidden. We talked everything in family.
And didn't your father have Rakı Sofrası and then he would recite Nazım Hikmet in the military bases?
Yes. We don't have religion, we don't have any God in our home. the family's moral value depend on only socialism. My father liked so much socialist poets.
But he was quiet about it, yes?
He was completely quiet.
Yeah.
And later I discovered that the silence was very noisy in our family.
Yes.
We talked everything, but we never talk about our roots. What is our roots? Who were our previous ancestors?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
they came, where they born.
And that's not that unusual. It's
Yes.
not that unusual. I mean, it's very hard for me to explain. I mean, in America, people don't often know very much about their grandparents for another set of reasons. But in Turkey, you're almost
You
afraid
don't
to
know.
ask sometimes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I understand it was a kind of silence, a kind of silence, and every year for 15 or 10 days we used to visit the grandfathers. I was sitting with my grandmother father's side.
How old were you?
I think 10 years old. And she was very talkative woman. She talks about everything, little bit strange, weird things. She talked about Gabriel came and we talked together, and she, how can I make bread? She described everything, but she never talked about her childhood. One day, it was the very important moment for me. She was sitting on the sofa, and her eyes dreamy and focused to the emptiness. Then she said, they butchered us.
Butchered us, yeah. Did she say anything else? Just
anything else. Only said, I think she only said to me. And at this moment, I began to carry as a burden, also as a legacy. I think this moment made me a writer. And always think that I have been writing from this moment, since this.
Because you started when you were 11.
Yeah.
So yes. I just realized that now. Yeah.
I asked my family, nobody answered.
Really?
Nobody to say anything. Okay, don't ask this kind of question. They warned me. At this time, I learned that we are Alevi. Our religion completely different. This is not sect, I think. Also, this is completely different. And it was forbidden to talk about Alevism outside.
I know. I'm going to pause because I'm going to ask you to explain. Most people here probably know what Alevi is, but maybe not everybody.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
So Alevi is it's a version of Shia Islam that is often conflated as an ethnic group, and I think, personally, I think as a category it reveals how ethnic groups actually are constructions, and these things, these boundaries are
You can
false.
be Kurdish Alevi and
Right.
Turkish Alevi.
Right,
That's
exactly.
okay, yeah.
But it's a small.
It's not so small.
It's not so small.
No.
It's a minority ethnic group in Turkey, and their religious practice. They don't go to mosque, for example. They go to a cemevi. They have different kinds of beliefs about how to worship, yeah.
Twirl.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
So whirling dervishes are, a sort of famous Orientalized example of Shia Islam, of
But there's in the Cennevi there's dancing.
Yeah, but
yeah,
a little
sorry.
bit different Shia Islam. Shia Islam also a kind of orthodoxy.
Right.
But Alevism depend on the pantheism, shamanism.
It's very Anatolian.
Very
It's very Anatolian. Yeah.
Very esoteric, yeah.
So this is something that I'm very interested in from having translated your short stories, which are drawing a lot from the mythologies and practices of Anatolia. We can call it shamanism, we can call it Alevi, but of course we don't call it anything, we just talk about these practices. And one of the things, it was very mysterious in your short stories, very mysterious. I'm still wondering about some of them, some of the practices. And this book, you open up some of those, I understand the short stories better through this. It's because of the kind of book that you decided to write. You decided not to write a straight history or a refutation of a rebuttal of official history. You were trying to do something else.
Firstly, I want to explain why I didn't want to write historical story, because the history, the name about he, and the historical novel came from the romanticism and very classic way. And Zeus has two sons. One of them is Kronos, other one is Cosmos. The Kronos arranged the time, arranged the story by arranging linear time. And then very masculine,
very Western,
and power language. And then, but Cosmos is completely different. Cosmos want to arrange unique cosmos. I didn't want to make again and again the historical chronological line. I didn't want to make, how can I say, categorize, symbolize, dehumanize the people, polarize.
Yeah, but what you did do is you have the book is about loss, silence, grief,
silence,
shame.
Yes, silence and shame. I want to conceptualize the shame and the silence. First, I found the silence. What is the silence? This is very noisy. What is the shame? Because my grandmother feels ashamed. Why am I survived? This was a very difficult question, and it is present time.
But the book, which is very, very beautiful and has the pull of a legend, you must have felt that a lot when you were translating it. And so this person who's being silent about the story itself is being very, very eloquent about all of the legends that her life is still part of and very, very close to the earth. At which point, can you read that little chapter? So we give an example. Okay.
Okay. Now you've entered the age of figs. You're ready to show and tell all, on the brink of offering your honeyed core to life. You even have a fig tree there, blocking your living room window. You've learned how to get by on the feeble light filtering through its broad leaves. The tree's shadow casts another dimension into your daily life. At first, anyone who visited your home would have to listen to you talk at length about it, let you translate for the fig without its permission. In fact, you often got carried away, telling visitors that the fig leaf resembles a giant hand, the hand of the goddess Demeter. You bestowed meanings on the leaves that leaves can't bear. After all, every life is defined by such meanings, and you were defined by figs. Before you rented your current apartment, when you were wandering from realtor to realtor in Beşiktaş, You insisted that you wanted a small ground floor apartment, and moreover, one that came with a fig tree, telling those who looked at you with bewilderment that the time had come to live with a fig tree, as if that sentence made the slightest sense. They gave up looking for a flat altogether, thinking a fig tree was all you were after. Muammer, with his Coke bottle glasses, was the only realtor who took your request seriously. I love walnut trees, he told you in his nasal voice, smoothing his hair down from its part down the middle. His shoulders were covered in dandruff. He tried not to stare at his yellow teeth as he prattled on about how sleeping under a walnut tree always left him in a gentle daze, waiting patiently for this dull banter to end. The only thing you and Muammer had in common was trees, but your eyes, they couldn't see past figs. The first thing you did after you signed the lease was name the fig tree in your garden. You called it Zevraki, claiming the name meant both boat and wood, the nickname of an Alevi bard who died long ago. You've always loved the letter Z. Every word that Z passes through seems to you caught in paradox, half dead and half alive. Everything Z touches, azure, zephyr, zero, zenith. Z blazes like fire, freezes like ice. Zevraki, that seemingly musical name, circumscribed the tree, enclosed it in a place oscillating between dream and reality. Ignorant as to the sex of your tree, you attempted to graft it with the name of a poet. It's not natural what you did. All it does is reinforce the recursive cycle by which civilizations build the logic of their own undoing into their very foundations. Naming something forces it to adapt to you. It is the first step toward domesticating all of the earth's creatures, the rageless and meek, the plain and serene. Regardless of the name you gave it, the only thing you will ever see in the tree is a semblance of yourself.
Thank you. Now, you have a story about a fig tree in your own life.
Yeah, in my own life, one day, there was a fig tree in my grandmother's small garden. I want to eat a small fruit, and she said, "Be careful, this is your sister." And it was the first ethical value in my life, and I noticed that I completely go out of human-centric idea at this moment.
Okay.
This is for me a philosophic approaching to make poetic, aesthetic way in my life, in my literature. And then it is not about me, it's about tree, because the tree also see us, not we eat the fruit only. And then when I began to develop myself, I want to deny essentialist, speciesist idea. This moment helped me. What is the sexist? What is the speciesist idea? And I think I learned naturally, not intellectually.
Yeah. That's evident. As you're talking about trees, I'm remembering a man in one of your stories who.
A beggar.
Well, no, it's the one in which the woman has had a romantic session with a man she's been having a flirtation with, and they go to a mountain, play lodge, and they have an afternoon together. And after it's all over, she sees his feet for the first time. That's your story. Okay. The foot is so ugly. She's disgusted, and she has to hide it.
Okay, I remember.
And something happens to him at the end of the story. He turns into a dead tree, doesn't he?
Yes. He tried.
Thank God.
Yeah, he tried to give the essential liquid of tree, and he killed the tree and gave the woman, and she disgusted him. Yes, I remember.
Yeah, but there's a wonderful time before she gives him what he deserves, when he's had a great afternoon and he's having a cigarette, and she's trying to conceal her disgust of his feet.
Yes, yes.
But he's thinking that everything's going to happen, yes?
Yeah, how can I make love this kind of feet? Because always man categorized to the woman body, and I want to give the same things. How do you feel if you look?
But she's so polite, you know. She's disgusted, but she doesn't want him to see while he's going around. But it's triumph. Anyway, so trees are and also the earth is always talking back, yes?
Yes.
So now the fig tree, there's a lot about, I think the way I would like to describe this book to all of you is poetry sung. So you just waft along, it's from image to image, from story to story. It all starts in one place and it comes back to that place. And the fig tree is there at the beginning, and the fig tree is there at the end. But one of the things we find out about fig trees is that fig trees are very friendly to snakes.
Snakes.
So they create spaces for snakes. I didn't know that. Yeah. And you have lots of snakes in your writing.
Snakes.
Snakes.
Yeah.
You have to explain. Could you please explain, because I think I know, but I don't know enough. Yeah.
But I don't understand very well. What's the mean snakes?
Yılan.
Snakes. Okay. Snakes. In Anatolia, snakes is owner of your salon. And snakes has their special remember. And
then also a girl is unusual, often have a snake.
Yeah, snake.
Charm.
It is a very strong mythology also. I live everywhere in Turkey because my father was a member of military force. We live mostly countryside. I see
snakes
so much. And I saw that the snakes is not dangerous, also very silent. Maybe I identify myself. Snakes coming very silently and never touch. I heard a lot of story about snakes also.
From your grandmother?
From my grandmother, from the women.
Yeah, from mostly the women, yeah?
Most of the women talk about snakes, but also when they talk about snakes, they talk about their sexual identity.
Yeah.
Because they cannot talk about men and their sexual life, their fear. They transform the story into snakes.
Yeah.
And that's why it's very strong metaphor.
Yeah. So I also wanted to talk to you both about language, because you're one of the, you do some of the most beautiful things with contemporary Turkish. Yeah. Okay. Very, very interesting things. But I know from your afterward that you were using a lot of words that have been a lot of Ottoman words this time. So you can start.
Sure, I'm more than happy to talk about that. That's my wheelhouse.
Because you have to explain why that's a bit controversial. Yeah.
Right. So the Turkish language in the late 1920s, early 1930s underwent a language reform at the same time that the sort of homogenizing policies were being enacted in places like Dersim, these sort of physical forms of violence meant to bend people to the sort of Turkification policies. The language was also being subjected to a kind of symbolic violence whereby foreign elements, so that's like Arabic, Kurdish, Armenian, Greek, Ladino, and others were sort of removed by a cadre of nationalists who were part of the government, and they were replaced often with French loanwords, things like that. And so as a consequence, Turkish texts written in Turkish from over 100 years ago, let's say, they're written in a different alphabet. They're even when they're transliterated into the Latin alphabet, I can't understand them. I don't know if you have better luck than I do, but they're really difficult. And one of the things that's interesting with Every Fire You Tend is the text is just replete with these kinds of Ottoman kind of anachronisms that for people who are reading it in Turkish, they're really difficult. You know, when I first sort of heard about the book, I mentioned it to a couple of friends of mine, and they were like, "Oh, you know, I started it, but it was so hard. I had to keep looking at the dictionary, so I put it down." And I mean, for me, that only made me want to translate it even more, like, you know, like to stick it to them. But that I think was one of the things that I really struggled with in trying to render it in English, is how to, on the one hand, maintain some of these obscurities or these sort of opaque moments or phrases, while at the same time trying to find ways to account for this history, you know.
And so how did you do it? How did you go about it?
I mean, I spent a lot of time
with a dictionary?
With a dictionary, with several dictionaries, a lot of dictionaries. One thing that I talk about in my afterword to the book is Sema does this really interesting thing with Arabic loanwords. So Arabic as a language is based around roots, and roots are sort of declined into different forms to represent different things, right? So kitab means book, kutub means books, kutubane means library, so on and so forth. Mektep means letter or school or something. Anyway, you get the idea. It's these sort of like clusters of conceptual, of concepts around a specific root. And so something that Sema does in the text, which I think is really extraordinary, is she will sort of bunch these sort of different declensions of these Arabic roots and sort of let them kind of echo off of one another throughout a passage.
And it's also about sound, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very much about sound, and kind of like the sensuousness of the text. And so in those moments when I encountered these sort of kind of Arabic root words, I tried to create some of the same musicality in English, even if it's not sort of getting the word one-to-one from...
It's the music.
Right, it's the music, yeah. So.
That's why I never define myself, especially Turkish or Alevi or something, but
I bet your grandmother didn't like to define herself either. Yeah.
But I define myself, I am Turkish language, because the
Turkish
language is bigger than being Turkish.
Yeah. Well, you have beautiful things to say about what we're made of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
because
about.
I made of the language as human being, and the language make us human and make us existence. That's why our language, how big, how big language I have, I feel myself more open the earth. Okay. I feel more open existence to the world. Turkish language, at the same time, not only Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and Helen, Greek civilization, Pontus civilization. There are a lot of civilization together, and this is a deep existence of human being. That's why I don't want to be, some modern identification. We need to meet each other because everybody wants to know quickly. You are Turkish, you came from Islamic country, Middle East country. It's not enough to meet. I think every language make us human, and we can know each other with our language.
And also voice is physical. Voice is and music is musical voice is particularly But I'm thinking again about those short stories I lived with for such a long time.
I hope
and the
I
mysteries. I'm just going to talk about the title that we chose for the collection, which was the title of one of the stories, which because it's about words, the well of trapped words.
Yes.
So we have a well there, and we have words that are trapped. And something that happens a lot in this book is that the narrator or various narrators within the narrator is saying, you must share this with, you must tell nobody. You must tell nobody. It's just for the two of us, or so it's a different kind of secret, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a different kind of silence. And you're breaking silences, but then you're talking about the importance of not sharing things. Importance of trapping words.
Is about at this moment when I discovered this silence, I always think a lot of various kind of silence. The well of trap, when you give your big secret, you can die.
Ooh. Okay.
Because there are a lot of people in Turkey, they cannot die. They have some secrets, they have some guilty and shame. I know a man, he was 99 years old. Everybody in his family waiting his dying because he painful, he feel big pain. And they waited. The last time he said, I am Armenian, and the system transformed me, and I continue as a Muslim Turkish man, but reality, I am Armenian, and he can die. And there are a lot of story like this. That's why the silence is very important.
It keeps people alive. That's a thought I'm going to have a nightmare about. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This this story about to give your story to others, and you can go
and die happily.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. What do you think?
What was the question?
I'm just still shaking from this idea that, because I've spent my whole life finding secrets, just tearing them open and showing them to people.
Right. I mean, we were talking earlier about this. I think that there's a certain way in which refusal is a key element of this book. Like refusing to succumb to silence is something that I think is being dealt with in the narrative.
And refusal of official history.
Right. And also
refusal of silence, because otherwise there would be no words. Yeah.
And I'll say also just refusal of the novel as form, right?
Yeah.
This is not like a novel, it's not like a linear novel per se, right? It refuses some of the conventions that we expect of
but it has a perfect shape.
Novel. Right. The shape of a fig, as she says in the book. But then also like a kind of refusal to be circumscribed by the categories that are imposed upon us, right? So Sema choosing not to identify as a Turkish writer or as an Alevi writer, but as a Turkish language writer, I think actually frees us up from some of the traps or limitations of
identity.
Right, identity and its institutions.
Yeah, and it's the atemporality of identity, which is always what I find. Yeah. So another thing, which is, again, it's you're a writer in the Turkish language, but drawing from all of the traditions that have fed into it from the earth, but also from mythology. So I have rarely read a book in which there are so many prophets, and they belong to those lands, but they don't belong to a single religion, Yeah?
Not single. Yeah, because I have no religion. That's why I'm very open, and I believe that every human wants to be a kind of God, because all
I do anyway.
all books want to give all books, divine books, not Quran only, Bible also. What's the name?
The Torah.
The Torah. Always try to describe a a human being, for utopic human being, and we want to be a kind of God. This is our utopia. Then, how can I say? I use the mythology, I use the text to give, to remember the reader. All prophets' voice is about always to a kind of speciesism, because prophets
there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of violence in the story.
Prophets always talk about a human-centric idea.
Yeah.
But God never talk about that. The God always talk about earth and universe. And I think the literature try to find voice of God.
So, the voice of literature is refusing the prophets.
Yes.
Yeah, remembering not Abraham but Isaac's. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And do you think that when you're writing, do you think is it your refusal that gives you your inspiration? But in refusing, is that where you get your strength as a writer? Saying, I won't do that. Not a big deal. So, what do you think? You heard me.
Yeah.
I mean, the refusal is a great source of energy to refuse.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
When you feel yourself resist, you can find the more creative way.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Because this is to turn back something, you can find and discover new topos, new topos of language.
Yeah, yeah.
This is, I think, an opportunity, it's an advantage. Yesterday, Daniel asked me, yesterday, 2 days ago, dear Daniel asked me, what did you, with your limits, and because there are a lot of limits we lead, there is reality is limits, and the time is limit, history is limit. And I little bit surprised, because I never feel all of these elements a limit, a kind of limit. I turn back of them and I see a lot of opportunity for creativity.
From Tank. You can subscribe on all major podcast platforms or follow us on SoundCloud. The theme music for this podcast is taken from Waiting Games by Kate Simcoe and the London Electronic Orchestra.